All. It's now 7 o'clock, so the Town of Los Gatos Planning Commission meeting of July 10, 2024 is now called to order. I'll begin by apologizing on behalf of all in attendance as to our special circumstances regarding temperature and or smell. So please bear with us all as we go through it, but I think we'll have a rather quick meeting tonight, so hopefully it will be tolerable. So thank you all for working through. So as we begin the meeting tonight, I would request that staff would make a presentation regarding the rules of civility.
Thank you. For the benefit of the community, the Town of Los Gatos asks that you follow the town's meeting guidelines while attending town meetings and treat everyone with respect and dignity. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me take roll. As I say your name, please indicate your presence by saying here. Commissioner Barnett.
Here.
Commissioner Burnett.
Here.
Commissioner Janoff.
Here.
Commissioner Mayer.
Here.
And I am here as well. Thank you. Commissioner Burnett, would you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance this evening?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you so much. So as the Planning Commission conducts the meeting this evening, we encourage active participation by the public, which is essential to the important work of this commission. Public input is very much welcomed and is always considered. During our meeting, there are two opportunities for members of the public to participate. First, during the verbal communications period, an individual may speak on any topic that is not on the agenda for tonight's meeting. And second, during the hearing tonight on any agenda item, any member of the public may speak about that item. You'll be advised of the times when you speak on those items. If you wish to address the commission tonight during either the verbal communications time or when we consider an agenda item, please raise your hand on the Zoom app, or for those of you that are here in person, please fill out one of these yellow speaker cards and turn it into the staff. Please print your name clearly, or if you're speaking anonymously, please just write down your initials. When you speak, I ask that you come up to the microphone and speak directly into it. This is important because the meeting is being recorded. Also, when you are called to speak, please state your name and address for the record, or indicate if you are speaking anonymously. In fairness to all who wish to speak, your time will be limited to 3 minutes. So our first portion of the agenda tonight is verbal communications. And verbal communications is members of the public are invited to address the commission on any matters that are not on the agenda. You have up to 3 minutes to speak, and staff will let you know when your 3 minutes are up. Are there any members of the public in person who wish to speak on any verbal communications matter? Also, anybody on Zoom?
There are not.
Thank you so much. Then we will proceed. We have no matters on the consent calendar, and so we'll move directly to the public hearings. That is item number 1. Requests for approval for site improvements, that is retaining walls, requiring a grading permit on property zoned HR-1. Property is located at 17020 Los Cerritos Drive, APN 532-21-012 and 013. Architecture and site application S-24-0005. The project is categorically exempt pursuant to CEQA Guidelines Section 15304, that is minor alterations to land. The property owner is Sandra Campbell. The applicant is David Fox. Initially, may I have a show of commissioners' hands of those who have visited the property? Thank you all. And are there any disclosures on this? Seeing none, Ms. Walters, I believe you have staff report for us this evening.
Yes, good evening, Chair and Planning Commissioners. On April 10th, 2019, the Planning Commission approved architecture and site application for a design to mitigate unpermitted retaining walls and a required grading permit at this site. Building permits were then issued in August of 22. However, no works occurred on site to date, and the architecture and site application has expired. Before you tonight, the applicant is applying for a new architecture and site application to construct the same design that was approved by Planning Commission in April of 2019. The scope of work has not changed and includes constructing lower tiered walls in front of the unpermitted walls at both the rear yard, and driveway areas of the subject site. The added tiered walls will bring the project closer to meeting the hillside development standards and guidelines by reducing the exposed retaining wall heights, assisting in breaking up the continuous retaining wall lengths, adding landscaping between the tiered walls, and by adding structural buttressing in front of the existing unpermitted walls. The proposed project requires exceptions to the hillside development standards and guidelines, which include grading outside of the LRDA. And in the driveway area, the exceptions include exceeding the maximum allowable wall height of 5 feet and the maximum allowable fill of 3 feet for yards. Should the Planning Commission find merit with the proposed project, the Commission may grant the exceptions to the hillside design guidelines and standards. Staff recommends approval of the application, subject to the required findings in Exhibit 2 and the recommended conditions of approval found in Exhibit 3. Staff does request a modification to Condition of Approval 39. The modified condition would read, all grading activities and operations shall be in compliance with Section 3 of the town's hillside development standards and guidelines, except as allowed by the exceptions granted with the approved application. So it's just clarifying that they do need to be in compliance with those hillside design guidelines, except for the exceptions if they are granted tonight. So this concludes staff's report. We do have staff tonight with planning, building, and engineering if there's any further questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Walters, for that report. Commissioners, any questions for staff? Commissioner Janoff.
Yeah, thank you. We received a letter from the public requesting reduced hours of operation. What are the normal hours of this type of operation? Or what's permitted?
I don't recall. Let me ask if Robert Gray, the building official, could answer that.
There we go. Sorry for the delay. Robert Gray, Chief Building Official. The normal working hours would be 8 a.m. to 6 p.m., Monday through Saturday.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions for staff? I actually have two very quick questions. First, I wish to confirm, I think you've already said, Ms. Walters, the scope of the work that we're examining tonight hasn't changed than that which was approved by the Planning Commission earlier. That's correct?
That is correct. It's the same scope.
Right. And since that previous approval, have there been any changes to the hillside design guidelines?
No, there have not been.
Thank you so much. Any other questions for staff? Yes.
Is it correct that this is a de novo hearing and that although the April 10, 2019 matter is in the record, that we're not particularly bound by that in any way? It's not an appeal or, for example?
That's correct. This is a new application.
Any other questions? No. Then I will open the comment section to the applicant. I believe we have one card here, Mr. Fox. Mr. Fox, if you wish to approach the microphone, state your name and address for the record, and you will have 5 minutes to speak. Thank you.
Thank you very much and good evening. My name is David Fox. My address is 1188 Kottenberg Avenue, San Jose, California. I am representing the owner as the applicant. I'm a landscape architect, and we took this project over at the request of the owner so that we could get reapproval, hopefully, from the Planning Commission. As was stated by Ms. Walters, nothing has changed on the property. There's been no work done whatsoever since the stop work order was put in. The scope has not changed, and if it is approved by the Commission tonight, with Mr. Gray's approval, we have building permits that are still in force, and so we would not have to re-up those. But what we do need is approval by the Planning Commission to reinstate the lapsed planning approval. So I think unless you have any questions, it's the same site, the same scope, and nothing's happened out there.
Thank you, Mr. Fox. Before you sit down, I'm sure commissioners may have questions for you. Commissioners, questions for the applicant? Commissioner Janoff.
Thank you. Just a clarification on the driveway retaining wall. It's 12 foot high, is that correct?
In some places, at its very highest it is.
Okay. And how many, according to your plan, it was difficult for me to see how many tiers you are proposing to reduce that 12-foot height down to a tiered height?
In that particular area, there's one 5-foot wall in front of the tallest portion of the wall. It's not a very long section of wall, so that would leave a 7-foot section exposed, and that was one of the exceptions that was asked for in the application. We had thought about cutting the wall down a little, but we can't. The slope is too high in back, and so we have to stay with that. But it is an interior portion of the wall that is set back from the main line of the wall, so it's not readily visible when you enter the property. It's only visible when you drive substantially into the property towards the house, and there would be a 5-foot wall in front of that with landscaping from below and from above.
If I could follow up. So of the total length of that wall, and I'm looking at I'm looking at a photograph that's got a stepped up portion and then two long, tall sections. Approximately what percentage of those two long, tall sections is at the 12-foot height?
The total length of the wall has about...
Well, excuse me, let me clarify. What portion of that is above 10 feet? Because if our exception is, or if our height limit is 5 and 5, what percentage of that would be over 10 feet?
Not even 10%.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Burnett, I thought I saw your hand earlier. Oh, Barnett, I'm sorry.
I have a couple of questions for you. I'm not sure as the landscape architect that you're going to be able to address these, but for the backyard retaining wall, there's proposed to be 2 tiers. And according to the proposal of the applicant, presumably at this time as well as in 2019, that there's going to be 1 tier for the driveway retaining wall. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Can you explain why 2 tiers are for the rear wall and only 1 proposed for the front wall?
Well, the 2 tiers in back meet the hillside standards and guidelines, right? The total cutback there is higher than 5 feet, so 2 walls would be required in order to cover that up. The driveway portion, the way that the driveway in the house is configured, if you come out too far, you can't get to the back of the property. And so the 5-foot portion that comes out narrows that part of the driveway to a point where it's passable, and it gets you back to the rear portion of the site. If we had an exception where we could go 6 foot or 7 foot on that lower wall, then we could keep it within the standards. But we're limited to 5 feet there. And even if we put another wall in front of it, the wall behind that, there's not enough space to structurally put another wall behind that and have it stay up. If that makes sense. Your initial wall
Tell me a
is,
little more.
Your initial wall is here. This is your wall. This is the big 10-foot wall. If you came out, let's say 6 feet and put another 7-foot wall up, and then came out another few feet and put, let's say, a 4-foot wall up, this wall is essentially freestanding. It doesn't have anything in front of it to keep it up. That wall in front cannot be made structurally sound enough to keep it up, even with piers. Also, the small wall in front, the 5-foot wall, has buttresses internal to it that are holding up that 5-foot wall behind. And a freestanding wall would be at a disadvantage in that case because the footing could not be carried forward enough to provide enough structural elements to provide the buttressing for the taller wall. I do this all the time.
I have a follow-up. But at the April 19th, April 10, 2019 meeting, there were 2 proposals for that wall, and one did include 2 tiers. The Planning Commission decided at that time not to require the second one, but can you explain that in terms of your response about the structural strength of the wall?
As far as my understanding, obviously I'm the 3rd guy in on this project. As far as my understanding was, the commission felt that the one wall adequately addressed both the hillside standards and the structural integrity, keeping the structural integrity of the wall. But they didn't feel the second wall was necessary. It got close enough to the hillside standards.
If I can continue, Chair?
Please.
But I understood that you were making a case for one tier only on the driveway retaining wall because of structural issues in creating a second level, and I'm confused why that option was on the table in 2019.
The structural engineer on that project happens to be one of my very best friends, and I've talked to him about this. He always had reservations about the second wall because he didn't feel as though they could adequately buttress the second wall in line in there. And what he felt was it would have to, I'll draw a quick diagram. If this is the back wall and this is the second wall, that it would have to have a buttress that went above the wall itself. He felt that it would have to have a buttress above the wall itself. At that time, when they presented to the Planning Commission, all of the structural hadn't been worked out.
I see. Thank you for that. I'll pass, but I may have some more questions.
Thank you, Commissioner Janoff.
Yes, ma'am.
So just to be clear, you're proposing for the back, for all areas, you're proposing one additional terrace. Is that correct? Because there's already two sort of along the back area.
Yeah, I think the project has to be separated into the two separate areas, right?
Yeah.
The wall that
But,
goes
just-
along the drive and then the one in back.
Right. So along the, just to follow up on Commissioner Barnett's question, it appears from the description that you're adding 2 tiers to a lower wall and only 1 tier to a very high wall. And so, and if that's the case, if you could just clarify that that is the case, yes.
That is the case.
Okay. A second question I have with regard to your argument that the interior wall, if there were 3 walls, would be structurally unsound. Why doesn't that argument also apply to the very tall wall behind it, which is only supported at the back, and you're proposing a very relatively short wall, giving you anywhere from 5 to 7 feet above that? How is your argument? How does it work with the existing very tall wall?
The existing wall, because there were no details done on it, they can't certify how it was built. And so it needs to, the structural engineer felt that it needed to be buttressed. And the 5-foot wall that comes up has walls that go from the front wall to the back wall. Now, if that wall could be taller, it would be better. If a 7-foot portion could be put in front of the 12-foot portion, it would be better. But we're limited to 5 feet. So the buttresses are more frequent in that case. So if you built a wall in between, you'd still have to have those buttresses in between. It becomes a much more complicated problem in order to do that, because then your lower wall is trying to hold up a higher wall, which is trying to hold up a higher wall.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions for the applicant? You may be seated. We're going to ask other members of the public to speak, and we may address you further shortly. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Are there any other members of the public who wish to be heard on this matter? I only have received one card. I don't see anybody else in chambers. Mr. Paulson, is there anyone on Zoom?
There is not.
Thank you so much. At this point, then, I'll invite the applicant. Should you wish to make a closing statement, you may. Otherwise, you may cede your time. I leave it to you. Thank you.
I just wanted to reemphasize that nothing has changed on the property, that no additional work was done. They're not asking for any more than what was approved previously, and that work would be done according to the previous approval, and they would start work again under the current building permits.
Thank you so much. Questions for applicants? Oh, I'm sorry, before you
I
sit
should have
down,
another one for you.
one more question.
Sir.
At the 2019 hearing, there was discussion about the extent of the LRDA encroachment and also the height space of the wall, the 5-foot limitation,
Yes, sir.
and whether a 2-tier would, on the driveway wall, would help to further mitigate the violations of the hillside development standards and guidelines. Can you comment on that?
I would say, if I could make just a general point about the location of that highest wall, it isn't visible from anywhere. It's an interior wall and an interior site. You can't see it from the road when you come up because you're above it. And there are no views into that portion of the lot because it is completely blocked by the house. So perhaps when Commissioner O'Donnell was the driver of all of this, perhaps he saw that and felt that it was enough of a mitigation with it not being visible, with the house blocking that area, that the violation was acceptable in that particular case.
But I guess my question is, can you quantify the additional mitigation that would be achieved by having the second tier on the driveway wall?
My question would be, who's it mitigating it for?
Well, that's not my question, because there was discussion in 2019 about whether the consideration of visibility is a driving factor or a controlling factor, or whether the integrity of the hillside development design and guidelines, the integrity of those needs to be preserved, even if it's not visible.
Well, excuse me, sir, I'm sorry.
I'm done, thank you.
I would say, I would like to point out that the hillside standards and guidelines, there is not a guideline that limits the height of a retaining wall. The hillside standards, it is only a guideline that says walls should not be higher than 5 feet. It does not say they cannot be higher than 5 feet. So we could, under the guidelines, potentially put a slightly higher wall there that would completely mitigate this. And we could mound up the dirt in front of the lower wall. Let's say that it were 7 feet tall. We could mound up 2 feet of dirt. There would only be 5 foot visible, and the top wall would only be 5 foot visible. So I think that if we're talking about the integrity of the hillside standards and guidelines, we're talking about a guideline and not a standard here as far as the height of the walls go. So we could absolutely mitigate this to a 5 foot exposed wall were we to build a 7 foot wall in that small portion that is 12 foot tall and merely raise the grade in front of it so that we had 2 5 foot exposed walls.
Okay, I understand your perspective, and thank you for that.
Sir.
Thank you. Commissioners, any other questions for applicant? Thank you so much. You may be seated. And we have no further questions or comments from public, so I will close the public portion. Actually, I'm sorry, before I do, I'm going to ask a question of staff, 2 questions specifically. First of all, with respect to, and whoever is the most appropriate representative can go ahead and speak. The first, with respect to the comment about the 5 foot height being almost a recommendation as opposed to a standard, if we can have that comment. And also the discussion we had about the structural performance of the walls, if we have an opinion on the performance of the walls as previously approved. Thank you so much.
I can speak to the first question. Thank you for that question. It is a guideline, guideline 1, exceeding the maximum allowable retaining wall height of 5 feet. It says that the retaining wall should not be taller than 5 feet.
Thank you. And
then with regard to the walls, Mr. Gray?
Yeah, thank you for the question. It's difficult to say because the original wall was built without the benefit of a permit or a plan. And so when that happens, we often request, or most of the time request, a structural engineer to go out and review, possibly do some destructive testing to determine what that wall is and to make a substantial recommendation as to how to remedy to the fact or to be able to permit it as is. I am not a structural engineer. Let me second that. Because of that, I rely on the integrity of structural engineers to make that determination on how to remedy that particular wall. It would be difficult for me to say that the recommendation that he's made would be inaccurate, that would be wrong.
thank you. I appreciate those comments. Commissioners, any other questions? Yes, we should.
I have a question for staff. At the 2019 meeting, the Planning Commission had a lot of discussion about the cost of the additional wall, and I think it was estimated that it would go from $190,000 construction cost to almost double that. And the question was raised with the then town attorney, Mr. Schultz, who gave an answer that might be a little ambiguous, but I think that the tenor of it was that it was not a consideration for the Planning Commission. Do you have any comment on that? And I guess the town attorney's not here.
Thank you for that question. No, I think we would stand by that that recommendation that the cost of the work is not a factor that Planning Commission should be considering in their decision.
Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions for staff? Seeing none, then I'll close the public portion of this agenda item and then invite my commissioners to ask questions, make comments, or if appropriate, make a motion. Commissioners. Commissioner Janoff.
So we are hearing this new, and I personally didn't go back to review the prior meeting. I was in attendance on the Planning Commission at that meeting, and recall the reasons why I voted as I did. One of the things I'm hearing tonight, which I don't recall hearing in that presentation, is the consideration that, so my concern, I think all along, was with the retaining wall at the driveway. The height is formidable. It's well beyond the guidelines. Mitigating it with a 5-foot wall seems sort of disproportionate and may not provide the structural support that we would be looking for. Having heard the applicant say that a 7-foot wall would be an improved mitigation against the stability of that rear wall and could be banked with additional soil in front to create the illusion of a 5-foot wall, even though it's deeper than that, strikes me as a reasonable recommendation, provided that we also have the benefit of a structural engineer's opinion at this point. So I find that to be a compelling path going forward.
Thank you. Commissioners? And Commissioner Janoff, I wonder, would it make sense to ask applicant if they're willing to do both of those things that you proffer, that is the 7-foot wall with the berm and structural engineer review?
I believe we heard the applicant say so, but we could certainly open the hearing back up to nail that down.
If I'm just going to open that up for just the purpose of the one question, you heard Commissioner Janoff's suggested resolution. Would that be acceptable to the applicant?
I believe that is a superior solution to the one that we have now, because it provides more buttressing for the wall, it's a safer condition, and it's not unreasonable given the hillside standards that we can make both of them then look like 5 feet. So I think it's a much better solution.
Very good. Thank you for your comments. I'm sorry, before you sit down, I believe Commissioner...
Sorry, yes, a follow-up question for the applicant.
Yes.
On this same topic. If we go down this path with the 7-foot wall, I want to visualize what's happening in front of the 7-foot wall. How wide is I don't know what the landscape architecture term is, but the planting area.
All right, just point of reference. Since we've already closed the public portion of the hearing, if we could just have, is there a way to do a yes or no question? So I can,
oh, okay, yeah.
Yes, we can mitigate it so it only looks like 5 feet.
I have a yes or no question.
Yes.
Will there be significant appearance of plants in front of the 7-foot wall?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you for the question and the answer. And then I will reclose the public portion of the hearing. And again, invite comments, questions, or thoughts, or even a motion from my commissioners. Yes, Commissioner Janoff. Oh, I'm sorry. Well, it then strikes me then that I'll go ahead and opine that a common sense solution is on the table that seems acceptable to both town and applicant and solves, I think, all of our concerns, both aesthetic and structural. And so then I would move to, I'm sorry, I'm just searching for the language. Move to approve these site improvements, that is retaining walls requiring a grading permit on property zoned R-1, HR-1, located at 17020 Los Cerritos Drive, APN 532-21-012 and 013, architecture and site application S-24-05. I can make all the required findings, that the project is categorically exempt from CEQA, that the project meets the objective standards of Chapter 29 of the Town Code. The project is in compliance with applicable sections of the Hillside Development Standards Guidelines, other than the requested exceptions for grading outside of the least restrictive development area, exceeding the maximum allowable retaining wall height of 5 feet, and exceeding the maximum allowable fill depths of 3 feet for yards. And finally, that the project is in compliance with the Hillside specific plan. With the requirement that the plan proceed with the conditions of approval as attached to our packet, with the further considerations as noted by Ms. Walters during her staff report, and the further discussion as had here in the Planning Commission, that is that the wall height will be 7 feet with, it appears to be some earth and related plantings to visually hide the height of the wall in front.
Just for clarification, that the increased retaining wall height up to 7 feet in height with the 2 foot of soil banking in front of it would be in the driveway area, and it would be in front of the portion of that wall that is up to 12 feet in height.
Let the motion so reflect. All right. Commissioners, second? Yes, Commissioner Janoff.
I'll second that motion.
Thank you so much. Comments, questions?
I may be missing something, Chair, but I had as additional considerations the granting of the approval for an architectural and site application, Exhibit 2.
Thank you for noting that. My motion is still amended.
And one more.
One more?
Architectural and site application S-24, is it 005 as well? In addition,
Yes. I believe I noted that in my motion.
With the
If not,
conditions?
it is so motion. It's so
Okay.
modified.
Thanks so much.
Thank you for those comments. Any other comments, Commissioners? Thank you. Then we have a motion and a second. By show of hands, can I see all those in favor of the motion? And the motion carries 5-0. Thank you so much, and thank you. Are there appeal rights, Ms. Ermer?
There are. The decision of the commission can be appealed to town council by any interested person as defined by Town Code, Section 2910.020, within 10 days on forms available online and with fees paid. Final deadline is 4 p.m. on the 10th day.
Thank you so much, and thank you. All right, let's move on then to our other business and report from the Director of Community Development.
Thank you. I have one exciting thing to announce, that this afternoon we received certification from HCD of our housing elements. So thank you to all and all the hard work that went into that. It was very exciting. It is now posted online.
Well, thank you for that wonderful announcement, and again, thank you to commissioners and staff for all your hard and diligent work. It looks like it's all paid off, so thank you so much to all. Subcommittee reports. In addition to their time on the Planning Commission, each Planning Commissioner also served on a subcommittee. Have there been any subcommittee reports since our last meeting, Commissioners? Seeing none, then I believe that leads us to the end of our meeting. Again, thank you to all for their time and efforts in this matter, in all matters, and for, again, helping us through these difficult building issues. I think we've had a successful meeting here, and I look forward to seeing everybody again in 2 weeks. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you.